Kia ora koutou, I'm Anne-Marie Case-Miller. Welcome to our Smash Round the Kitchen Table online event. Firstly, a huge thank you to our Smash sponsors, Dairy NZ, FMG, Balance, Pioneer and Rabobank. We value their support, and without it, our events, both online and of course on farm, wouldn't be possible. Speaking of on-farm events, we were so looking forward to seeing many of you at our February events, which were scheduled for Waikato, Northland, Manawatu and Southland. Unfortunately, we've had to postpone these events until the current red level situation eases. We're looking forward to announcing new dates for these events, so make sure you keep an eye on our Facebook page for those new dates. Today, as we begin preparations for the late summer, early autumn, we're going to join Waikato farmer and Smash committee member Will Rolton and Wade Bell from Pioneer Brand Products around the kitchen table. Together with his wife Kirsten, Will 50-50 sharemilks 450 cows near Te Aroha. He and Kirsten are married with 2 young children and live between Morrinsville and Te Aroha. They went contract milking in 2013 and 3 seasons later started their share milking journey. They've called the Waikato home since 2011 and enjoy the challenges of running an efficient 50-50 operation and spending family time together. Wade Bell is a farm systems specialist for Pioneer, supporting farmers to get the most from their chosen farm system. He's an independent farm consultant in the Waikato for the last 2 to 3 years before that, and prior to that was a Dairy NZ regional manager for 8 years. He was also a rural banker and is currently a Smash committee and trust member. Will and Wade will be happy to answer your questions, so just write them in the comments section on Facebook or sign into YouTube to do so. And with that, I'll hand over to Wade.
Awesome, thanks Annie. Great intro as always. So hey, look, we've got the next half hour or so just to have a chat with you, Will, just around where things are at the moment and how the plans are coming into place for the next 2 to 3 months and leading into next season. But before we kick into it more formally, it's probably quite good for our viewers to get a bit of a feel for just where you farm, the system you farm, how, the scale of your operation, and just get a bit of a feel for what you're up to.
Yeah, g'day Wade. Thanks very much for that. So, yeah, just a brief overview of what kind of system we do run and operation, like you say. We're milking on a 132 hectare effective platform. We try and start out the season with 450 to 460 cows. So in terms of the stocking rate kind of scenario, that puts us just below the 3.5 stock units per hectare. We get really good winter and spring growth in this area, so in this sort of region we're in, just outside Waitoa. So yeah, that works quite well. We aim to run a system too. We put a budget in at the beginning of every season to roll out a system too, and we monitor that and develop as we go on from there. We're spring calving, single block spring calf. I've got 2 full-time staff units plus myself, and we're very sort of stereotypical of a standard commercial operation. So we're diploid ryegrass almost across the board. We've got some lower levels of clover. We do some cropping through summer just to try and level out our feed supply. We've put some maize in historically. This season we've had to go with some deferred grazing and multi-species sort of diverse summer crop.
Yep.
And we take big cuts where we can of excess pasture through spring and put it under plastic in big, in as big a lots as we can to get economy there. So, Wade, I don't want to go on too long, but if that's a broad brush kind of position, maybe you.
Yep, no, that's great. Just and production wise, perhaps, and last year and this year, what's the sort of the.
Yeah, good question. So production-wise, we've last season we did 165,000 solids. So that worked out at $12.50 a hectare, which I was stoked with. It's nice to take some pride out of a figure like that. But previous to that, we've sort of being closer to that 1,200 a hectare. So yeah.
Yep. No, beautiful. So, look, one of the things I know, a lot of the focus of this session is going to be on kind of this late summer, autumn period. But I know after meeting with you a couple of weeks ago, there was a real learning experience that I thought it would be. We would miss an opportunity to not pick up on that and share that with the viewers. And it was around FEI at the time. And if viewers cast their minds back 2 or 3 weeks ago, things were looking pretty dry on farm and pretty desperate up until the recent rain. And you experienced firsthand a real spike in your FEI. So it'd be good to have a bit of a chat about kind of what was happening leading up to that. And then sort of managing your way through that phase and out the other side. What I'll do before you answer that, I will bring up the picture there of your FEI. Hopefully our viewers will get a chance to see this with a bit of luck. There we go. So that paints the picture for those that are tuning in. So yeah, talk us through it. Well, what was going on? What happened, and how did you come out the other side?
Yeah. Well, FEI is something which we've all learned, I suppose, to manage over the last few seasons, and we thought we were doing a pretty good job of that. We'd got historic learnings that we basically decided to roll out again. We do feed imported supplement through summer just to try and fill those feed deficits. And historically, with our kind of cow, which you'll see some pictures of, but it's a majority Jersey, not a purebred, but a majority Jersey. We kind of been able to feed up to about 4 kilos of supplement with a 70% palm kernel, 30% mixer. So that would be a soya hull kind of product, or a DDG, for example.
Yeah.
But 70% PK was something that we'd be able to maintain below that C, borderline A and B. Essentially, we took those historic learnings and thought, great, okay, we'll sign a contract on feed going ahead, and this is our framework, and we'll just try and put that into practice this season. I think what you can see on the graph there, Wade, is probably a pretty accurate sort of summation of my blood pressure too, as I could see things getting out of hand pretty quickly. We were on, at this point, Wade, we were on every second day pickup. Yep. So the Fonterra sort of framework is all based around a 6 daily average.
Yeah.
I had to go and clarify that because I thought it was a 6 pickup average. And all of a sudden I got this result that shot from a B straight into a C. And it was on the phone pretty quickly. But we've managed to tease out some of the reasons, Wade. But yeah, it's been a stressful experience. So.
Yep. And so you obviously just touched into the red zone there. So how did you react in terms of the feed decisions on farm? What did you just sort of tweak and adjust, because you recovered really quickly there? So how did you sort that out?
What you can't see would be an accompanying sort of trend is the drop in milk as I canned the PK blend immediately. As soon as I was getting the every pickup results through to my phone as well, and I could see them in the high 10s. We had a couple in the high 10s, which was just dragging the average up. So I dropped the PK out, got straight on the phone to Fonterra and said, look, I'm aware of this, but it's going to take time to turn around. And they were really helpful as soon as I'd opened that sort of conversation with them too. But we canned it for, I think, 3 days. We fed no PK supplement whatsoever. I got my feed supplier to drop in a pure truckload of soya hulls. And essentially really substituted pure soya hulls for that 70-30 blend until we got back in the green zone. And then essentially we kind of turned our blend on its head. And now we're running with the 30% PK, 70% blend, 70% soil hull. The economics on it are actually quite similar, but without the stress. And I think this season probably, Wade, the difference why it didn't perform as expected because we've got the addition of a summer crop in there, which is quite high on the grass scat. It's also got sunflower. Potentially there's sunflower element there as well. But the scenario wasn't exactly the same, and we definitely looked at that.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you raised there, Will. We often hone in on the PKE, and that's obviously the most or the highest contributor to FEI. But there are a few other components that also contribute to a much lesser extent. But perhaps if you get a few of those things lining up together, for example, if you've got summer crops or those sorts of things, they can be compounding factors, should we say.
It was all laid up. There was a really helpful document that Fonterra sent through, and I kind of read through it and thought, yep, that's us. And there are about 5 or 6 different sort of factors that, like you say, lay it up, and it put us in that sort of perfect storm situation. So it was a bit stressful for a while, but like all things, when you stand back and analyse it, there is a path out. You just got to do it as fast as you can. So
yeah, awesome. So cool. Thanks, Will. Like it does give you a bit of an insight. I think farmers have been grappling around with this for the last few years since FEI has been in place. So I'm sure there have been plenty of similar instances with viewers online. So we might move on now to really start honing in on, I guess, the situation now, sort of where you're at. And I know that's changed a lot in the last couple of weeks with the rain, and just what that means in terms of your budget, your projections, what your plan is, and just how that's playing out. So I think the easiest way here, Will, is if we perhaps bring up, rather than sort of sharing with the viewers, all of your all of the detail that sits within your budget. I've kind of just taken a few of your key points out that I think are quite good to share, and sort of work through, and we can have a bit of a chat about what's changed over the last couple of weeks. So if we just sort of run through these, so obviously growth rate's been a big change between 2 or 3 weeks ago and now. I've put the sort of the range and growth rates there. What's been the magnitude of the change from what you're seeing on farm?
Well, yeah, I'm quite pleased to put those pictures there accompanying the information, Wade, because those pictures were probably, goodness, 2 weeks old probably. And since that rain, things have changed quite markedly. The farm is now a shade of green, which is a nice change. But yeah, I put in some really, really conservative growth rates. I think for March I had beforehand I put in a growth rate of 15, and since revised that up to 31. And yeah, February was probably even lower than that. So just, I suppose what I'm doing with that document is every couple of weeks revisiting it and saying, okay, well, the weather event did occur or didn't occur, and how's that likely to change pasture, average pasture cover and growth rates. So yeah, certainly allowed larger growth rates going ahead, and that'll be something which I'll look at probably in a couple of weeks' time and tweak again, Wade.
Yep. It's all sort of very well known, obviously, that when you get those initial rains, you get a bit of breakdown of dead material, you get nitrogen mineralization occurring, and often get a flush of growth. What are you seeing on farm at the moment?
Yeah. Well, we're seeing sort of those, because we had quite a few overcast days, which accompanied the heavy weather too, which was great. The whole farm greened up, but now actually we're probably about halfway through our first round since the rain, and we're not getting any more regrowth behind it. So I think unless we get another system, essentially that follow-on rain, then we're going to sit tight. But the farm, as the saying goes, we're in a good growing state. We're not overgrazing, which is fantastic. So we're able to bounce back really quickly, when moisture does come. But yeah, there's really very, very little. I haven't plate measured it yet. I'll go around and do a whip around, but there's very little coming in behind, Wade. So, if we don't get something pretty in the next 10 days or so, we could be sitting in another round of sort of extending, bridging strategy.
Yeah. So this might be a good time. There is a question that just did pop up, is that whether your dry off date is set in stone, or will you continue milking if the conditions are optimum? So it's probably a good question to follow on what you've just been talking about.
Yeah. The budget, which I did a couple of weeks back, had the far more kind of conservative growth rates in there, and that had me drying off at the end of March. So it's incredible the difference that just pasture growth is phenomenal. It's by far your biggest sort of feed supply, even in System 5. So that is not set in stone. It's not something I personally am looking to draw from the 22nd of April come hell or high water. But that's just where the figures are leading me. That's essentially the guide. I think, unless we do achieve those rates, then I'm very happy to draw off earlier. Obviously, it'd be good to put as much milk in the vat as we can too.
Yeah. And I'd be fair to say your earlier budget had you drawing off. I think might have been late March, somewhere along those lines.
Yeah. I brought some focus to me, Wade. Brought some focus to me, and it stimulated some discussion with our farm owners, because obviously we're 50-50s. We've got to take a case, take the information over to our owners, discuss it all, plug a couple of different scenarios into these budgets, and look at other sort of sources of information that can help us decide things. But milk in the vat, it's not the same as profit, but it certainly does give you a good feeling. But no, 22nd of April isn't set in stone at all.
Yep. No, that's cool. Just around your pasture cover targets. So, do you want to just elaborate a little bit on where you're at? There's a big gap there to fill at the moment, which there often is at this time of the year, coming off the back of summer. So you've got a sort of an 1800 cover where you're at now. Your target cover is at the higher end of the range. Do you want to sort of elaborate on on that gap and just why the target of 25?
There is a mountain to climb. Some of it is, I suppose, operator preference. I like to go into calving with plenty of feed on hand. I always like doing those first 3 weeks when you're picking up big numbers of calves, and you can focus on the job, not focus on sending a staff member off to load up a tractor and feed out. So I suppose part of it is channeling resources. The other half of it is that I do know this farm well. We've been here 3rd season now, and it does grow phenomenally well while we still have soil temperature. So I think 2,500 cover is realistic. You're right, it is towards the higher end of the range. There will be some covers that are over 400, 4,000. But I just think it gives me a position of comfort to go into a busy period with and be able to focus on picking up cows and calves rather than running machinery.
Yeah, and it'd be fair to say, Will, you're a relatively early calving date too for those that are kind of checking in.
Yeah. That's really just driven by sort of these continual sort of summer dries that we have in this locality. But we try and gear up and just try and make that first 2 weeks as easy as we can.
Yep. Another question that's come in as well, Will, is just about whether you've used supplement more aggressively since the rain arrived. Did you that breakdown again, coming back to that breakdown of dead material and loss of dry matter? Did you have to compensate?
That's a really kind of good sort of teasing out the finer points sort of question. I was toying with it for a couple of days when I was milking in the morning. That's sort of the space I go to think things through. And what I actually did was leave things unchanged, because over a few days, we put on a green cover and grew, I'd imagine, approximately 200, per hectare, beg your pardon. But I thought, right, okay, well, I'll leave that supplement the same. And it's actually been really nice to see that protecting my residuals. So I was beginning to see a little bit of pulling, a little bit of overgrazing. And we did drop through the rain a little bit, but I just thought, right, we'll just keep it steady, keep everything uniform. And once we had that bit of compensatory growth after the rain, it's lifted those post-grazing residuals. So I'm pretty happy with that. It just sets us up for the next rain. That's what my thinking is.
Did you adjust rotation speed through that period as well, or you've largely kept all that the same at this stage as well?
I'm on as long a round as I can manage, Wade. I'm about a 28-day round, which actually sounds quite fast, I suppose, for a lot of people who will be in the low 30s. But I think when you consider just the situation on my farm, we've got 4.5 hectares out for maize. We've got, I think we've got 6 hectares approximately of deferred grazing, and we've had 7.6 hectares of summer crop. So there's quite a chunk of my farm that's out of rotation, out of the standard rotation anyway. So I'm on quite small allocations on a 28-day round. So everything's just been keep trucking as we are.
Yeah. So it's kind of on the edge there with the amount of area you've got out for crops. And
been under pressure to try and give me all these bulk feed options. It's put the round under pressure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, and we might come back to a couple of those feed sources a little bit later on, but just with the supplement and the deferred grazing that you've got, I think what have I got there? 570 kilos a cow and supplement and deferred grazing through to the 30th of June. So you've explained the sources of those supplements. Have you given any consideration? So that's fixed, I take it. That's stuff that you've actually got at your disposal at the moment.
Everything there is contracted or already on farm. And to answer the first part of that, no, it's not fixed. We could go again to our farm owners and say, look, again, we're in a really favourable payout position, but my personal feeling is that I've made the purchase, the feed purchase decisions I already want to make for this season. And when we're talking about getting into early April, we start to sort of get into that situation where we actually need time to put cover back on cows, and compromising average pasture cover, body condition for next season, that would be, potentially that would be a bit of a dicey scenario to get yourself into.
Yep. You can imagine, though, there'll be quite a few farmers out there where there's probably a pretty healthy feeling of optimism about the gap between current payout and supplementary feed prices, even perhaps on the spot market. Have you done any investigation yourself into, hey, look, do I chase that a little bit harder, or do I stick to my principles?
We started off share milking a bit further south near Te Aroha, and we copped a bit more summer rain, but we started out as these hard-nosed system, low-range system 2. I think one season we actually did a system 1. And when we moved a bit further north and started talking to our neighbours, we were really blown away about how much feed they pumped in. And I've slowly been sucked into this more and more feed situation, which goes against the grain a bit. But I don't really feel that I want to put too much more in. I've done market research. I signed a contract on PK at 324 X store. That was back in July. So I'm really happy about that now. It's panned out well. But I think, that's an X store. You put $30 delivery on top of that. You put dry matter into that equation, and that pushes your actual down the throat sort of figure way up. I can't remember the exact figure, Wade. You might be able to correct me, but I think
we're getting close to in the current sort of spot prices. The numbers are getting close to 50 cents a kilogram of dry matter. By the time it's landed on farm, so it is getting up there.
Times that by 0.9 for dry matter, and then down the throat. Well, most people are going to be talking about probably a 20% wastage situation. It makes it remarkably expensive, and you need a huge amount of it to actually milk for an extended period.
I think looking at your scenario there, if you budgeted a dry off date on the 22nd of April, you probably don't have a huge window when you consider you've got a condition score and a bit to gain. And when do you start calving? Early July. So you probably start getting confined or constrained by the time you've got available.
That's right. There's another factor to this sort of situation too, Wade. That PK, which I purchased early, has worked out great, but we've had to dial it right back. I bought 150 tonne on contract, and that was also factored around the 70-30 blend that we were feeding. So that's just been changed on its head. All of a sudden, I've got a lot of PK that I want to use because it's quite well priced. But the only way I can get around it is by channeling that into a different scenario and saying, right, well, I'm going to have to make this a dry cow feed. So I've had to juggle around my supplements and use them slightly differently than how I planned. But really to capitalise on that low price that I paid, I've still got to try and feed it somewhere, and that's where I think it's going to come in now.
Yep. No, very good. So just probably the last point around your budget. You've got a bit of work to do there from a condition score point of view, and look, it's been pretty well documented, well proven about the benefits of hitting those targets. I guess what I'm really interested in there is not so much the what are the targets and what is the size of the gap, but actually the approach you take to not only hit them but try and keep that range in condition score as tight as possible.
I listened to Jane Kay do some talking on this a while ago, and her sort of one of her key drivers was that it's not about your average of 5. Each cow has to be out of 5 because this can still be a huge spread within a herd. So what we've done, which has worked really well in the past, is just put a table up on the wall in the shed, and we've got first calvers and mature cows in different columns, and then we've got dry off dates based on condition that the cow's currently in. So essentially, on a weekly or 10 daily basis, we can go through and pull out those cows, which I don't get the vet sent, I'll just do it myself or any other accredited scorer. I just pull out those a tranche at a time. And it's a bit of a hassle because you've got a changing number of dry cows to work through, and you've got to, potentially if you're doing more than one dry off option, it does put some complication in there. But I start them off like that, Wade, and I certainly give the younger girls and the lighter girls a head start. Having said that, when we are dry and everything's had their 2 weeks out of the shed, I do bring things through and redraft on condition anyway, going through the dry period. So it's sort of ongoing. But I suppose I've put this budget in place till the 30th of June, really with a mindset to just focus me personally that everything's got to be done by the 30th of June. I've got to stop fiddling about with mobs based on condition score. Got to stop worrying about building cover. Everything's got to be done by the 30th of June, because by the time 1st of July happens, we're thinking about calving.
She's game on. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think just to elaborate on your point there, the optimum is to try and have no more than 15% of your herd at a 4.5 condition score. So largely the bulk of them obviously at 5 and 5.5s, and in a small portion, which you invariably get every year, at 4.5.
That's really.
Sorry, carry on. Yep.
Like I say, we don't get everyone to do it, but if you're making those decisions by yourself, it's still really good to get out and see other cows and see someone who is scoring professionally, because there's quite frequently a large gap between what a farmer like myself thinks and what a scorer would give a cow. So just to zero yourself in. Yep.
No, that's cool. And just to wrap this piece up, and I am going to come back to, there is a question that's popped up. I haven't lost sight of it, but in terms of feed retained, that's obviously a key part of making the system work for next year. So how much do you need to make your system work, and how have you come to that number?
Wade, I've got egg on my face, mate. At the end of last season, I thought, great, $7 payout, let's go for gold. I thought this farm motors through winters, no worries, So I kept chasing the white dragon, as they say, and I went for the extra 5,000 milk solids, but I mined out spring supplement to do it. I have a figure of 70 tonne of dry matter that we like to start the season with. That's, I suppose, partly based on my contract, my shed milking contract. Historically, I found that we can get through spring probably with a bit less, but it's really good. It's silly to start out a season under pressure from the get-go. So 70 tonne is sitting there. It hasn't been put in the feed budget that's represented on the screen here. And that really is gold-plated. That's to one side, and I'm not going to touch it. I did fall into that trap last year. Thought, no, let's use it. Let's put it in the vat. And I always put these feed budgets in going through the back end of the season. They're great. And quite frequently, I've looked over my shoulder a month or 6 weeks out and thought, no, I could have knocked for another 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. But the season I did it, I got burnt. So I'm sticking to the guidelines this time.
Yeah, cool. So it's about 150 kilos a cow of just physical supplement on hand. And added to that, you are carrying a slightly higher pasture cover than perhaps, as I said, at the higher end. So you might be carrying another sort of 100 kilos, 150 kilos a hectare of average cover. So those sort of two things together give you a pretty handy buffer.
Yeah.
Yep.
The first season we actually came to this farm, Wade, we didn't use any supplement whatsoever through spring, just did the whole shebang on pasture. So you got that situation. It's really good. And that feed's not going to go to waste, you know. You just roll it out at a different part of the season. Just change your plans.
Yeah, which is, hey, and look, that's the absolute benefit of stored feed, isn't it? You know, you can use it if you need to, or you can just keep pushing it on to the next gap in the wedge.
If it's under plastic, you choose.
Yeah. So look, I'll come back. There was a question earlier, and it was around the role of nitrogen in the autumn, and how has the cost increase impacted your views around the timing and the use and perhaps the quantities that you might use to finish the season?
Yeah, good question. So we've not been affected by the change in nitrogen application rules. We've flown beneath that level anyway. We finished the season with a round of autumn fert, and that's typically sort of a sulfur blend anyway, just to sort of essentially just to deliver sulfur. I think last season it was either 25 or 28 units of N per hectare. So I suppose what I'll probably do, Wade, is wait for significant autumn moisture, get the flush that's already coming, and when I feel that pasture flush has been delivered, at that point, then I'll travel, do a round of autumn fert. Last season, I can't remember exact figures, probably it may have been 120 kilos of N went on the farm, so we're quite low. Other people, they'll have to think about how they're going to use N, and whether they're going to have less applications or just lower application rates, and whether they're going to time to moisture slightly differently. So the game of strategy.
Yeah. And look, I think you make a good point there. You know, using that in after your initial kind of mineralized nitrogen's done its dash, because there's just there has to be a really strong focus not on just nitrogen use efficiency from an environmental point of view, but obviously now the cost of nitrogen, if you're using it poorly and getting low returns, then it's going to be a quite an expensive, or it could be quite an expensive source of feed.
Correct. Yeah. It's a resource like anything else, and you've got to just get the economy out of it that you want.
Yep. Hey, look, Will, we're pretty much done for time. But look, I appreciate you jumping online. It's not always the most the easiest or most comfortable thing for people to do. So appreciate you taking a little bit of time out. It's awesome to get just a quick snapshot of where farmers are at, and how they're sort of mapping out and planning that next few months. Hopefully, it's given viewers just a little bit of an insight as to what another farm in the district's doing, and perhaps one or two little prompts to perhaps do those budgets and condition score those cows, and sort of think about where they're going to pace their feeds for the next few months. So awesome. Thanks heaps.
Thanks, Wade. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for a really informative round the kitchen table chat, Wade and Will. Really appreciate your time and your sharing of knowledge and your learnings, and trying things and it not working, but trying things and it does work. Sponsors: Dairy NZ, FMG, Balance, Pioneer and Rabobank. Now make sure you follow our Facebook page if you don't already for our upcoming events. Register also at our website, smallerherds.co.nz, and then you'll get an email direct letting you know about our next field day or workshop. I'm Anne-Marie Case-Miller. See you next time. Ka kite anō.